What is up, you guys? Today is Thursday. I am Spencer, and welcome to FTM Transtastic. This week we are talking about binding and safety, binder safety, binding safety, pros and cons, all that good stuff. And I'm going to talk about two specific methods, the two methods that I use to bind. Before I start, I do want to make it clear that all methods of binding is caustic. All of it is harmful to the body, all of it is problematic, all of it caused some type of issue or anything, all of it is caustic. So this isn't going to be something where it's like, this method of binding is better than this method of binding because all of it's bad. You know, I honestly don't like to look at binding methods as in which is more safe for you. I look at it as what you're willing to sacrifice. What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to go through? Because at the end of the day, you know, dysphoria is hard. It's hard enough. And if one method of binding makes you feel the most comfortable, but may not be what everyone in the world is saying is the most safe, then you know what? You're an adult, or soon to be an adult. You have autonomy over your own body. You have autonomy over your life. You know your body better than anybody else. You get to make that decision. I'm not going to take that decision away from you. I am going to stress the cons and stress the problems with it, but you know, at the end of the day, if all the information is presented to you and you still choose to go with it, I did my job. Okay, so the two ways that I bind is with a binder as well as with KT tape. So I use KT tape, looks like this, KT tape. I use the black. They have a brown colored one. I can never find it. I don't know where it is, and I'm not gonna order it online. So if you know where the brown one is, you know, that's the one I prefer to use, but I just don't know where to find it. They always have black, beige, pink, and something else. So I always go with the black. I use this. I also use a binder. This is my favorite binder. It is the Flaunt Streetwear Bearskin Top. It is a size medium. I love it. It's the umber color. I use it to swim. It's a little wet because I came from the pool. Razorback, very thin straps, V-neck cut, and some good breathable material. So these are the two things I use to bind. Obviously not at the same time, but I use these most often, and I'm going to tell you, I guess, the pros and cons of both, and basically, you know, why I decide to use them. So first is the binder. I use my binder basically every working day, or if it's winter, every day. I use it because I work as an EMT. I work 12-hour shifts, sometimes 15-hour shifts, and lifting bodies and moving around, I really like create up a sweat, and the adhesive on the KT tape will wear off, so I just go with a binder. Now, I know, first red flag, Spencer, you're wearing a binder for 15 hours a day. Yes, I do. I do. I wear a binder for sometimes 15 hours a day, and that is a problem. You should never wear your binder. I think the recommended time is 8 hours. Honestly, it really just depends on you as a person. Obviously, the fear is fracture ribs, as well as, you know, you learn to take shorter breaths when you're binding because there is some constriction there. So that can make you feel lightheaded, etc., etc. And that is true. However, for me as a person, in order to function at my job, I have to have a binder on. And I have to wear a binder for 15 hours, and that's just what I'm willing to accept, you know? I'm willing to risk the possible fracture rib or the possible lightheadedness or whatever, because I have to work and I have to bind. So that's just kind of what it has to be. I will say that I always bring tape with me, KT tape with me, should I ever get into a crisis where I absolutely can't wear my binder. I always have a backup plan. I used to always bring a sports bra, but now I just don't. I just use KT tape. So I always have a backup plan should ever there's been a crisis. However, I've been binding for 3 years now. I kind of know my body and I know what my signs are. I have not had a crisis. I have been perfectly fine by binding for 15 hours. Again, it's not recommended, but this is what I was saying in the beginning. I don't really think there's you know, really anything that is recommended when it comes to binding. So it basically comes down to what you're willing to do and what your body can take. The second thing I use to bind is KT tape. How I use it, which I'm not going to put it on now because I'm not going to waste some, is I take 2 strips like this, and I basically cut them in half like that to create 4 strips, and I apply those strips 2 to each side of my chest. They stop basically right here, and it keeps me flat. So I do want to point out that I have a small chest. I think I was like a 34A or 36A, something along those lines. My chest is pretty small, so KT tape works well for me. And obviously the cons of that is KT tape is meant to stay on the skin for days, not for hours. I typically wear mine as long as like maybe 3 or 4 days. It just depends on how long the adhesive sticks and what type of like, how much work I put in, like how much I'm sweating, etc. So usually it's roughly around 3 to 4 days, and then I would change it. Especially with the summer being very hot here in Atlanta. Like I'm sweating a lot more, so it may cause for frequent changing, but I definitely can get 3 days use out of 2 strips like that. For me, the negative effect is obviously, you know, it could irritate your skin. If, you know, anything that's on your body for that long, it can trap, you know, bacteria and moisture and cause irritations, etc., etc. Also, it can damage nerve endings around the nipple and areola area. That's just because it is creating tension and causing a pull for 3 days. So it can very well, you know, decrease sensitivity and kill the nerve endings there. Again, it comes down to what you're willing to accept. Personally, nipple sensation for me really isn't that big of a deal, so since it's not really that big of a deal, whether it kills some nerve endings, it kills some nerve endings. But that's just like me as a person. I'm able to accept that. I can deal with taking some Clavamox if I get a skin infection. I can deal with, like, you know, having to not wear it for a couple of weeks to, like, fix myself and then go back to it. I can do these things, and I'm okay with doing these things, and I have no problem doing these things, which is why I'm willing to take the risk of binding with KT tape. I don't think one or the other is good or bad. Both of them are terrible, but, you know, it's just whatever you're willing to do and put up with. Some people can't take the stickiness or the adhesive. It causes irritation. Some people are unfortunately too big to use KT tape. Some people just don't like the feeling of it. It makes them feel too, like, exposed or whatever. For me, it works really well when I go to the pool. It works really well when I go swim at the gym. It works really well when I'm just, like, walking around Atlanta and it's hot and I want to wear a tank top or a cutoff or whatever. So I personally only basically use it in the summer, but it's definitely been one of my favorite ways to bind. It's one of the most freeing ways for me to bind. I don't really use it a lot when I'm doing, like, athletic activities, just because I don't think it has a lot of support, but, like, other than that, it's one of my favorite things to bind, and I will recommend it to everyone, you know, bearing in mind that there are some complications that come with it. So basically, when it comes to binding, all of it is hard, all of it is bad, all of it has problems. You just gotta figure out, you know, what it is that you're trying to achieve and what it is that you're willing to risk. You know, if you're not willing to risk the skin irritation, but you think you're gonna be okay with a broken rib, try a binder. If you're not willing to risk a broken rib, but you think you're gonna be okay with skin irritation, KT tape. You're not willing to risk either of it, free the nipple. You know, do whatever it is that you need to do to survive. That's what I want to drive home. Do whatever it is you need to do to survive. Don't be ignorant to the contraindications. Don't be ignorant to the warnings. Don't be ignorant to the possible side effects. Take them all into consideration and then ask yourself, what will make you happy? What will get you to survive until the next moment, until the next surgery, until whatever it is that you're looking for? What is it that you need? Figure that out and do it. Alright guys, it's been great. I hope you're having a great week and are gearing up for an even better weekend. It is Thursday. It is Spencer. Until next time.